everyone, and welcome to our quarterly updates webinar. My name is Allison Kim, and I am the marketing coordinator here at Litera Microsystems. We have a lot to cover for today's session, but before I hand it off to Theo, I wanted to just run through a few housekeeping items. So today's webinar will run for 30 minutes. There will be time in the end for a Q&A session. At any point throughout the webinar, if you have a question, you can submit them in the questions panel, and we will try to get to them if we have enough time. If not, we will reach out to you to answer your questions personally. With that said, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Today's session is presented by Theo Lister. He is our senior product manager at Litera Microsystems. He focuses on how lawyers work within the document lifecycle, mostly focusing on legal technology and the whole review and collaboration of document drafting. With that said, Theo, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you for that, Allison, and that was a far better introduction than I deserved. So, everybody, I should be sharing my screen now. So, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here and to watch us run through this. So, as Allison mentioned, throughout, if you have any questions, you have the ability to ask them and we can address them at the end. Or alternatively, we'll get back to you with our answers if it requires a little bit more length or we don't have enough time to get through everybody's content. So in terms of what I'll be running through here, in general, it's going to be a three-part list. So one is reflecting on the product team and our strategy. So this is some of the things that we've been researching, some of the things that we'll be continuing to research. And as you see what's happened as a part of the Q2 product release that happened last Tuesday, this will reflect some of those things we've been researching and some of the questions we've been asking our customers so that we can work out what's driving the marketplace and how we can be positioning ourselves to make sure that we're offering things which meet those emerging needs of the marketplace. And throughout, I'll also be showing, as well as what we've produced and talking about that, giving a bit of a hint as towards what we'll be working towards now that this release is done and posted, what we're working on now, and what you might expect to see in the next version of this webinar. So in 2018, so just to very quickly take a look back, we had three main areas of research that were informing some of the product decisions that were made and some of the things that you will have been seeing released back in 2018. So how people interact with their products, so user interface, and then product complexity. So some of the decisions we made involved dialing back some of the features where, from a user experience perspective, they were seeing too much at one time, or there was too much confusion on screen, because that is one of the things which is somebody's first introduction to what we present with them. And if there's too much, they back away, and it's hard to get them to make that step again. So stability and reliability. This is always something that we're working on, but because we have so many platforms, it was something we were really narrowing down on to make sure that we were having a consistent experience from platform to platform and that users were getting the experience they expected. And then third, so this is cloud and how different firms have different strategies, different levels of acceptance. Either that's because there's still security concerns or there's internal change management that needs to be made in order to get people moving towards the cloud. And Microsoft itself has really accelerated that by some of the programs and some of the systems that they're pushing. So we've seen a huge move towards that. And in fact, in 2019, we're still talking about it, but we're applying less of a focus on it because, again, this is something that's assumed at this point rather than something in particular that needs to be researched. So moving on to this year, to quickly clarify some of the things we're looking at. So Litera Connect, I will cover this in a little bit more detail because this informs some of the product decisions that were made last quarter, some of the things we'll be seeing this quarter and in the future. But at a very high level, Litera Connect is our partnership program with other technology vendors to make sure that wherever we have distinctive competencies with a particular type of technology, we can also share that knowledge with other providers so that at the customer level, you are going to be seeing two vendors working together and providing products which incorporate different things you've invested in so that you get the best benefit without having to integrate that yourself. Platforms. So this is something that runs a little bit off some of the 2018 research, how we can have multiple platforms that are informed by some of the changes that we see in terms of lawyers and as well as other legal professionals and people in life sciences, the ways that people expect their technology to present information to them, it is changing. And we've noticed that there's always going to be a divide there. And some of the things we did last year were all about making sure we could bridge that divide between different levels of experience with technology. Somebody who's just joined the workforce might be far more familiar with app model. Maybe they've even dabbled in computer programming, and that informs what they expect to see with software, compared to somebody who's been working in legal for 30, 40 years. They'll be familiar with a different type of platform, and making sure that we can bridge that gap and provide something that satisfies every user need. And then smart documents, this takes that concept a little further and tries to bridge that gap and also provide a different way that information can be presented to somebody. So smart documents as a concept goes beyond just any single one of our products. And we've also seen from the previous years, Litera Desktop being a presentation of everything we have to offer in one bundle. This takes a similar concept in presenting the information we might be presenting across different products and bringing it into the document that somebody's reviewing and moving a little bit further away from having a task pane to present all that information. So this is all very much focused on making sure that wherever we have a suggestion, an improvement, a repair feature across any of our different products that can be applied to something that somebody is working on and drafting with, we can present that within the document in the context so that somebody is reviewing, they don't have to interrupt themselves and go somewhere else to get what we're offering and be able to fix that. So Litera Connect, just at a bit more in depth to give it some value in terms of what we're trying to do here. Again, it's our technology partnership program, and we've always had a commitment to working with other vendors. It's just that we've recognized that this needs to go further than what we've been previously focusing on. So we've always worked with DMS providers very closely because we know that's one of the core areas where somebody starts their drafting process and then begins this, as we refer to it, the document drafting lifecycle. So how something moves from its document creation through the checking and proofreading phase towards collaboration with other people. But as we've seen, DMS isn't the only part of that equation, and it's not the only place where people are investing in other products in the marketplace. So this is our way of making sure that we effectively play nice with others when it comes to different third-party vendors. So we're presenting information in a way that doesn't require our ultimate customers to translate that here and there. We can work with vendors behind the scenes and make sure that if somebody has invested in two products, maybe we can work together with that other provider and deliver something which realizes as much of that ROI, that return on investment, as possible. And again, making this more seamless for users and also the people who have to administrate what those users are seeing. So this is also now applying to areas where our core services, so that's the checking, the comparing, the creation, where they aren't available at the moment, or other platforms where they aren't currently positioned to work with the existing user workflow that we focus on, which is mainly the operation of Microsoft Office and working in those areas. And again, that's another way that in making sure we're working with those people, we can help that return on investment be realized because it's more easy to visualize for lawyers, and it also more easy to coordinate from an administrative perspective. So with all that behind us, a brief overview of some of the areas that we're focusing on. So case research being one, and I'll talk more about that later. AI, so that's already something that we've looked into, and actually as a part of the Q1 release, one of our AI integrations was present in our Clause Companion product. Content repositories, so not just DMSs, but also effectively anywhere that you can be storing information which may be valuable to somebody as they're drafting. And collaboration might be the different areas, the different places where two individuals are working and need to share that information. A lot of the time that might be Outlook, but as we see, that's changing. Email isn't the only way that people are collaborating, and we're researching that and making sure we're on top of that. And then finally, mobile, web, cloud, however you want to position it, the different ways that people are operating has gone just beyond the Microsoft Office suite, and we need to be aware of that. So to get into the substantive parts of what's changed in the product, so create. So this is the first part of our document drafting lifecycle. And I've also covered what happened in previous quarters at a very high level to give a little bit more information. So in quarter one, we went through this user interface, user experience review to work out exactly which features were getting the most use from our customers, which ones had the highest priority in terms of user interface redesign, making sure we're carrying the right things forwards as we continue to develop our products. And that was kind of the frontwards facing part of things. So in Q2, what we've ended up doing is making sure that our databases, some of the behind the scenes structure of the products are also in tune with that, so that as we work and act on some of these recommendations that have been made from a user interface perspective, we have the technology there to be able to support that, so that we're not just changing the user interface and then finding unknown problems that crop up as we change things and then never change the system or the engine behind the scenes, that we're updating these databases so that we're actually seeing the synergy between the engine and then the results that start showing to the user and the user experience. And in quarter three, we'll be working on the interface and having a few updates so that we can then start presenting some of that information to the user. So that multiple quarter journey from the UX review is then being realized in a few of the things that we see in the interface. And that will be an ongoing commitment as well to make sure that our interfaces are updated with recommendations from our customers as needed, but we'll be seeing some of that in the future as well. So after create in the document drafting lifecycle, we have Clause Companion. So this is taking the concept of your templates and your precedents and slicing it a little bit thinner. So we're focusing just on the clauses themselves, those blocks of content, which they also change from document to document, but it may be that you've created something with your creation tool, or you're opening up a precedent or a template, and then you still need to switch some language around based on ever-evolving client needs or differences based on the individual deal you're working on. So I mentioned earlier, and this relates back to Litera Connect, working in a shared ecosystem for different technology vendors. We connected to Kira as a part of our Q1 release. So Kira is itself a repository of information based on different deal documents. And we connected with that to make sure that we were presenting some of that information in a way that a user is going to be accessing as they're drafting day to day. So this is taking external content and giving you the ability to populate a clause library with that so that you can effectively start drafting, use something that's already been curated for you, and hardly stop in terms of your workflow. So not being distracted and having to leave Microsoft Word when you're drafting so that you can get that information. Moving on, so we needed to make a few changes to the API so that honestly, the reception we got from this was pretty positive, but people wanted more in terms of the information that could be presented to them as a part of this API connection. So Q2 saw us improving our API abilities in regards to Clause Companion, and also, and I haven't mentioned the particular provider here because this occurs more within the life sciences sphere of things, but opening up this API so that other providers can work with us and getting a little bit more information about how we make this more agnostic to the vendor so that this can be something that other people in the workspace or in the technology fields can plug and play with and get more value for our ultimate end users. And in Q3, we're going to be not so much talking about the API as much as how you can take an active document and then more accurately use that information in the document as a part of your clause library, as a part of your template solution moving forward. So really reusing that information in an intelligent way so that you can get to your next template or your next deal, starting with a much better standing than just a generic template. So DocXtools Companion. There have been changes to DocXtools itself, but I'm going to focus here on DocXtools Companion. So here, this is the ability for, as a user, if I have house styles or firm styles, as they might be called, giving the ability to, when running the numbering feature, whenever possible, conforming to this style, using the house or firm style as a part of fixing the numbering, so that what I receive at the other end is more familiar to me. And this relates back to the types of platform, the types of user interface that people are expecting to see. If somebody is very well trained on seeing the internal firm style, that's firm branding. That's something they might be very familiar with seeing. And if we fix the numbering, and the numbering might then be pristine, but if the branding looks like it's changed, that can be very distracting to users. That's something we focused on making sure we're mitigating. And we've also made a few changes, and some of these are available upon request, so that you can fix the numbering and the cross-references, and the cross-references and table of contents features don't necessarily have to fix the numbering before operating. It depends on the quality of the document. You might not get the best results if you haven't corrected the numbering first, but sometimes the numbering is fixed. You don't want to change it, but you do want your cross-references or your table of contents automated. So that is another change that we've made. And Q3, and with DocXtools Companion, we're going to be continuing this maintenance of styles, making sure that what changes in the document is what the user would expect to see, and providing a bit more reasoning behind what we're doing, so that, and numbering is scary to a lot of people who aren't very familiar with it, making sure we can walk them through that process so they know what's happening, and so they're more accepting of some of the changes that need to be made with their documents. So on the proofreading side of things, so I mentioned, again, as part of the Litera Connect program, we had the case repository connections, and this is one of the areas where we moved into that. So case research was a big focus for us as a part of this quarter. And what we ended up doing as a part of that case research aspect, we've been picking up case citations for a good while now as a part of the product. But of course, all we're doing is picking them up and allowing somebody to review them. We're not providing any opinion or substantive reasoning as to whether this is up to date, whether this has been overturned, things like that. So that's where this integration with Lexis Advance came in, which means that now when lawyers or legal staff are reviewing their citations, they can review them here in Litigation Companion, produce a table of authorities if needed, but also as they're going through this process, they can read the case text, see the status that the courts have afforded those cases, and make sure that what they're ultimately presenting gets them what they need in terms of the argument that they're presenting. And you'll see on the left-hand side, Q1 was focused on active drafting. Q3 will also focus on active drafting as well. And this is a continuation of that concept of the smart document, trying to take as much of the information that we're presenting here in this task pane and make it available for the user as they're reading the document. So Q1 was our active drafting. As we made it happen. We made something that you could visually see in the documents, and we're going to be building on that and trying to make sure that definitions and attributed errors that revolve around definitions can also be viewed as a part of that drafting experience without having to look at the task pane. So comparison, this is where I will talk a little bit more about Litera Connect, because this does loop back to DMS providers and how closely we work with them, because we, as a part of Q2, we made Change Pro compatible with iManage Work 10. This is the version 2 API. And what this may have the highest impact on is firms that are on iManage Work 10.2 and use the multi-tenant cloud or cloudimanage.com. So this means that now customers on iManage Work 10.2 can host their data on the multi-tenant cloud, the single tenant cloud, their own on-prem server. But we wanted to make sure that our products, which were already compatible with single tenant cloud and on-premises servers, were also compatible with a multi-tenant cloud, and that's via the iManage Work 10 v2 API. So there's a little bit of action required from customers on multi-tenant cloud in order to get this, So you can see here is a screenshot of our administration panel, and we have a few steps, and it's relatively easy to make that transition. And we have this information available from your customer support representative. And for Q3, we're going to be making strides in terms of improving the speed of comparisons and making sure that we're ready for the web. So making comparison available in more and more places, as we saw earlier, cloud, web, mobile, however you call it. Different ways of consuming technology are on the rise, and this is just another way of making sure we're ahead of that. On the cleaning space, so this is in relation to Metadact, our metadata cleaning product. Amongst other things, one of the things that we changed is adding, and we're calling this sensitive data handling, adding these controls. So based on the information that you might be expecting to see as you email somebody, we've always been cleaning attachments as part of our metadata cleaning. But one of the things we've been seeing is even who's being contacted, the manner in which you're emailing. These are all things which relate back to the concept of mitigating risk, which is a core driver of what Metadact is trying to do. So we built in quite a few features surrounding different ways you can control that information. So at a very high level, cutting down on Outlook auto-completing names when you're typing things in the to or the CC or the BCC fields. The reply all and forward buttons, giving the administrator the ability to warn people if they're replying all and somebody external to the company is on that thread, or even blocking that feature entirely if that's what's needed, if that strict of a measure is really needed in order to make sure that you're getting the right behavior out of users. And then alerts and potentially blacklisting particular domains or addresses so that they can't be contacted if that's something that needs to be done. And for Q3, we're seeing a lot more of an emphasis on this type of data protection even from Microsoft. And they're rolling out a lot of changes regarding Azure information protection. And we'll be doing a lot of work to make sure that we're compatible with that and we're keeping up to date so that as our customers and our users are rolling out these new Microsoft features, we can work with that and that we're not a barrier to a firm's internal progress. And Secure Collaboration Suite. This is something I spoke about last time, and it's something that we were working towards as a part of this release. But this really does focus on this modernization of platforms and coinciding with how people expect to see their information. So we're working on changing the user interface of our Secure Collaboration Suite so that it fits more into the type of thing that our users are familiar seeing in their day-to-day lives, perhaps even in their personal lives. And so we'll also be supporting the file share of folders, as well as updating the UI. So a very broad overview of our product roadmap for this year. And I've already covered these points, but just seeing it on one screen may help consolidate some of the things we've been working towards. And of course, these all relate back to those core themes that I mentioned earlier. So this year, as well as those core themes, those are the things that we were working towards that were influenced by the questions we've been asking, the research we've been performing as a part of our 2018 research. This year, just some of the things that we're investigating this year. I don't need to go into too much detail about this, but you may see some of these things influence the roadmap decisions for 2020 and beyond. So it's worth putting them up here. So knowledge management and how that role is changing. That's something that a lot of different firms have different opinions on, but it's something that we want to narrow down on to make sure that we're getting the right story and we know how to position our products accordingly. Data loss and prevention. We've moved some of the way towards that, but every different firm has a different understanding of what DLP means and how they're going to implement that. So understanding that and making sure that we're able to help wherever we can across our product suite. Integrations and ROI, that's already being moved towards as a part of Litera Connect. Of course, there's so many people in the market space for legal technology. We want to make sure that we're understanding all those different potential integration points so that we can deliver the best value for our customers. And then finally, international language requirements. As we move internationally, as firms have a more global presence, we see more and more of our products being used across different languages and different offices, and understanding what's stopping people from getting the fullest value, what people are currently using today and they're completely fine with, making sure we know that so that we can move in the right direction for making this applicable across different languages. So with that, I will take a quick pause. So we have some time available for questions. And Alison, hopefully you've been monitoring anything that's been asked so that I can give a quick answer to any of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Theo. We do have a few questions that came in. Our first one is, do I need to do anything extra to get the litigation integration?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, that's a good question because I glossed over the process of getting the product updates, which may be an interesting next step for people who've attended this if they want to see what's changed. So step one would be to get the latest version of the product. And for the Lexis integration or the litigation one, that would be Litigation Companion. Installing it, and the integration itself needs to be enabled in the settings. And then whenever you click on the research button as part of a case citation, that will direct you to Lexis Advance. So in order to be able to see the result there, you will need to have a Lexis Advance account or subscription. Otherwise, we'll take you there. And if you don't have a Lexis Advance subscription, we do have a more lightweight integration with Google Scholar, which will show you at least the case text, but won't give you a lot of that other flavor about how the courts have treated something.
All right, perfect. And then we have another question. It's about API. Is the API better documented now?
That would depend on which API it is. I'm going to hazard a guess that it would be the iManage API rather than anything else across the other products. May or may not be. For the iManage API, we've certainly put a lot of effort into documenting that. And as for the alternative Clause Companion API, at the moment, that's all of that technical work really happens on our end. So it's not documented, but that's more because we wanted to document the workflows that users will be going through rather than the technical requirements. And I can clarify that later if there's a particular product area that needs to be gone into.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And then one final question. When will be the next release?
Okay, so the next release, and that will be Q3, and that will be September the 17th. And we're trying to make that as uniform as possible, so that will be for all of the products listed.
All right, thank you. Before we wrap it up, I just want to remind everyone that you will receive a recording of today's session afterwards for those who were able to make it and also for those who weren't. And you can also check out all of our past webinars and upcoming webinars by checking out our website, or you can go to litera.com/webinars to see what we have in store. With that said, thank you so much, Theo, for presenting today's session, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out and reviewing, and please let us know if you have any further questions that we couldn't take the time to cover here.
All right, thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you.